sunrise, and we're spending a day on the Shipwreck Coast, about 280 kilometres west of Melbourne. Waves that have travelled uninterrupted across the Southern Ocean from as far away as the Antarctic slam into the Australian continent through an early morning fog and sea mist in a relentless, never-ending show of force. It's a force that has claimed over 160 sailing ships and yet has carved out a spectacular array of geological shapes. We're going to start at the western end of the Shipwreck Coast and explore the 30 kilometres of its fascinating shoreline. This is the Bay of Martyrs, a sweeping bay of ancient headlands and coves with limestone islands and rock stacks that appear to push up out of the ocean, even float on its surface. Some with the eerie appearance of the sailing ships of old that floundered on these shores. It's a part of the coast that is exposed to strong winds that race unhindered across the Southern Ocean with speeds of often up to 90 kilometres per hour. The fear of having sailed thousands of miles across the world only to be wrecked just days from the journey's end was in the back of every mariner's mind as they approached these treacherous waters. A few kilometres to the east is this site, the Grotto, a fine example of millions of years of erosion by the sea and wind. The power of the waves relentlessly pounding against these limestone cliffs has produced a coastline of constant change and rugged beauty. Most tourists take a brief look, take a few photographs, then leave. Not us. We're going to explore further. We're descending 70 metres down into a giant gorge carved into the cliffs. Vegetation clings to wherever it can, as still deeper we go, leaving the sunshine behind. Till finally, in a pit of battered walls and broken rocks, awaiting the next high seas, we reach our destination, the Grotto. Spectacular when heavy seas are running, and yet beautiful in the silence and tranquility of today. Rugged and beautiful shapes, sculptured by the hand of nature. How many tourists have seen this? Not too many. 5 kilometres along the Great Ocean Road, and it's easy to see why the next site is called the Arch. It was originally a cave in a cliff face that had been gouged out by battering waves. Waves crash into the limestone, form a cave, the cave collapses to form an arch, that in time collapses to form a rock stack that eventually collapses into the sea. It's a never-ending cycle of evolution. But waves are not the only sculptors of nature. These shapes have been created by wind and rain from storms that sweep in from across the ocean. The soft limestone, no match for their power. The arch will eventually be lost to the sea, but in this moment in time, it's one of the wondrous features that make this coast unique. The coastal plain above the cliffs is a wind-swept stretch of vegetation, heath that grows in abundance, interwoven with gorges and a network of paths, all accessible from the Great Ocean Road. Yes, this is London Bridge, another of the Shipwreck Coast's popular tourist attractions, now a large inaccessible island of limestone. But it may be falling down. Its fame and popularity increased dramatically in 1991 when a large section connecting it to the mainland suddenly collapsed, leaving a number of tourists trapped on the remaining body, a reminder of the dangers inherent in this part of the coast. London Bridge lies in its own spectacular bay, bounded by 70-metre high sheer vertical cliffs formed some 25 million years ago when the entire region was covered by sea. Over time, layers of sediment turn to limestone and mixed with clay result in the beautiful colours of today, watched over by silent sentinels of weathered rock. It's midday and we're on our way to the small seaside town of Port Campbell. It's a quiet holiday town centrally located on the Shipwreck Coast, popular with tourists eager to explore its nearby coastal attractions. Situated in a natural river gorge, It provides the only sheltered harbour on the coastline, offering great opportunities for relaxing, including fishing, swimming and surfing in waters protected from the wilds of the coastline. A short distance to the east of Port Campbell is the Lockhart Gorge. Millions of years of erosion has resulted in a secluded beach enclosed by precipitous 70-metre high cliffs. A canyon-like crevasse between sheer walls of limestone opens to a sea that in stormy weather sends waves rolling far up over the sandy floor. Once the domain of local Aborigines, the gorge divides into two arms rather like the letter Y. This is the western arm, with a spectacular cavern of timeless stalactite formations at its extreme. It is bounded by a large headland of weathered rock that separates it from the eastern arm, together with its own large cavern and amazing rock forms. This is Muttonbird Island, a large 45-metre high island of rock that lies just off the western side of the entrance to the Lockhart Gorge. It lies in a windswept ocean off a rugged shoreline of vertical cliff faces and jagged headlands, continually battered by pounding, unforgiving waves and turbulent waters. The island is a predator-free home to over 50,000 muttonbirds that annually migrate to as far away as Alaska before returning to breed each summer. But for all its natural beauty, it hides a tragic past. On the 2nd of March 1878, the sailing vessel Lockhart left England bound for Melbourne, Australia. 90 days and 15,000 kilometres later, in the early hours of the morning of the 1st of June 1878, the ship found itself off course and dangerously close to the rugged cliffs of the Victorian coast. The captain and crew desperately tried to fight the winds and tide and sail the ship clear, but it was to no avail. The Lockhart, with 54 persons aboard, smashed into the rocky cliff face of Muttonbird Island. Within 15 minutes, it had slipped beneath the waves. Tom Pearce, an 18-year-old apprentice seaman, dragged himself up onto the beach, deep within the gorge that would later take the ship's name. A short time later, after hearing cries for help, he swam back into the gorge and hauled a passenger, 18-year-old Eva Carmichael, to safety. Pearce carried the girl to a cave he had found, made her as comfortable as possible, and set about going for help. It was well into the afternoon before he successfully scaled the gorge's walls and begun the long and painful walk that would lead to the rescue of himself and Eva Carmichael. They were the only survivors. Today, the only evidence of the tragedy that gave the gorge its name is a small collection of tombstones in a graveyard partially hidden and almost forgotten on a windswept headland a short walk from the fatal coast. The most popular attraction on the Shipwreck Coast is the 12 Apostles, a collection of limestone pillars balancing across the waves offshore from a spectacular coastline of cliffs. Once part of the mainland, they are constantly subject to the powers of nature. In fact, two completely collapsed into the sea just recently. The unique contour of the landscape gives tourists great viewing opportunities and a chance to take that perfect picture. These two apostles stand alone to the east of their counterparts, as if guarding a beautiful and fascinating edge of the continent. Vertical cliffs of formidable beauty at low tide overshadowing a thin strip of beach. And that's where we're heading. We've reached the end of our day's journey, but we've got to check out that beach. Vegetation clings to survival as nature shows its strength. There are no shells on this beach, just fine sand, a testimony to the power of the waves. Stark, silent shapes silhouette against the late afternoon sun on a rugged and yet beautiful part of the southern coastline. And that's the Shipwreck Coast, 30 kilometres of some of Victoria's most spectacular coastal scenery. We've been there and done that.